Okay, hi guys. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rishabh. I'm a PADI dive instructor and I work at a dive shop called Quest Academy Asia in the Park Bay area of Tamil Nadu. Today I'll be in conversation with Madhu Mathy, who is a maritime archaeologist. She's also a dive instructor. Hi Madhu.
Hi.
Yeah, a small introduction of our guest today before we start off is she did an introductory scuba dive called the PADI Discover SCUBA dive back in 2012 and fell in love with the sport. Her journey to become a PADI dive instructor began with that dive. She then went on to complete her instructor course in 2015 and started working as an instructor. In 2017, she decided to pursue a 2-year master course in maritime archaeology at Flinders University, Australia, due to her interest in maritime history. During this period, she had opportunities to conduct shipwreck investigations in Australia and Vietnam, record sunken temple remains in Sri Lanka, as well as undertake a 6-week internship at an underwater archaeology branch of Naval History and Heritage Command in Washington D.C., USA. Hi, Madhu.
Hi.
So tell us a little more about yourself.
I think you've covered pretty much everything that needs to be said about me. But yeah, like you said, I'm Madhu Mathy. I'm from Chennai, basically. So I grew up around the sea, so it's always been a big part of my life.
Also, fun fact, Madhu did my dive theory and confined sessions during my open water course. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So, Madhu, let's begin. Just give us a brief understanding of what maritime archaeology actually is.
Okay. Assuming that everybody knows what archaeology is, which is conducted on land, right? Maritime archaeology has to do something with water or something water related. So it can be conducting archaeology underwater or on shore, but that site has to have some sort of maritime correction, like a beached shipwreck or a lighthouse, ports, etc. So that is what maritime archaeology means. So what we basically do is we go to that site, we record it, we document it as much as possible, right? Try to decipher whatever the archaeological site is telling us, and then we publish it, the findings. But publishing takes quite a while. Yeah.
So, you've told me that you've done some shipwreck investigations in Australia and Vietnam, and
Hmm.
you've also done an internship in Washington D.C.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that. I'm sure a lot of
Okay.
people will be interested in listening.
Yeah, sure. So, as part of my 2-year course, I was very fortunate enough to work on some really, really great sites in Australia and Vietnam. The internship I undertook with the naval history back in DC, Washington DC, was theoretical. So, I'll just quickly talk about my thesis site. So, this place is the thesis site is in Inverloch, Victoria, Australia. So we visited that place in towards the end of 2018 because we heard from the local community over there who told us that there's a shipwreck that they've been uh, keeping an eye out for. They were able to see parts of it coming back into the shore because of erosion and stuff. So we decided to go, and then we did some field work for a week. I fell in love with that site and decided to make a thesis out of it.
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of people have these questions, when
Hmm.
you see sunken ships and lost worlds. What do you find in these sites? What are you looking for when you actually go down there?
We don't know exactly. Um, I mean, we'll have some idea what we would probably find, but then we might not even end up finding anything, or we might end up finding something incredible that we did not expect that we would find. Right? Like, for example, when we go to a shipwreck site, we expect to find wooden materials. I mean, if it, depending on what kind of ship it is,
Yeah.
right? We expect to find the stern of the ship or bow of the ship or the frames that make up the ship, something like that. but and also depending on where that site is situated, we can also sort of get an idea about the condition of the wreck. So it's really, it does really depend on whatever we find once we get into that site.
Okay. So I have some pictures of some of the stuff that you've been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just, yeah. Why don't you explain? Because I honestly, it's just a mess to me. Can you
Right.
explain what we are looking at?
Sure. So this is my thesis site in Inverloch, Victoria. These are parts of a 19th century shipwreck, which was built in Jersey Islands in the UK. So this is a part of the site on the beach. So this can be called as maritime archaeology rather than underwater archaeology,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it is on the ship. Sorry, it is on the shore. So we have that long pole is a scale for measurements, and this is just basically what the site looked like after we excavated it.
Okay. So
Before
basically,
that, yeah, before that, it was completely covered in it's in an area of the beach where there is this constant movement of
okay.
sand, right,
Mm-hmm.
uncovering and covering. So
Got
it
it.
was, and it is also in the intertidal zone, which means that the water keeps filling up.
Okay. Should I go
So
to the next
more
one?
we excavated, the more water came in. So someone had to constantly excavate and then drain the water out. So that is the channel that you can also see.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Shall I go to the next one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is from the same archaeological site I was working on. This is the second part of the site.
Yeah.
We found a small part of this site sticking out from the sand,
Mm-hmm.
and so we decided to dig and um, excavate and see what can be revealed from the
Okay.
excavation. And this is what we found.
And this is a ship, right?
Yeah, this is part of the ship. Yeah, that's right.
Can by just looking at this, can you tell which part of the ship it is?
We have an idea. It could be We deduced that this is from the deck structure of the ship
Okay.
because of the fastenings and how they were basically, attached to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Okay. Next.
this is a wonderful shot. So these pictures were all taken, some of them were taken by Jackie Laurie, a local community member of Inverloch. And then this is actually one of her very nice aerial photo of the site. So the time that we went to this site, it was the weather was not conducive at all.
Okay.
So we could not see the shipwreck properly because a major part of the ship was still underwater.
Mm-hmm.
And during the storm, during the wrecking event, as we call it, the ship broke in half.
Okay. So this
So
is just one half of the ship.
yeah, exactly. So this is the part in the water,
Mm-hmm.
and then the pictures that you showed previously,
Yeah.
those parts were the beached parts
And
of
how
the ship.
far away from each other were the two halves of the ship?
Uh, I'll have to go back to my records, but not more than 150 meters.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
so quite, it's not too far away.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so this basically told me when I was doing my research, my thesis, this basically told me how the shipwreck site was and
Okay.
what to expect and what to find, basically, what I can possibly find.
Got it.
Yeah. This is taken by Trilby Paris. This is part of the shipwreck that's underwater.
Mm-hmm.
It's a stern rudder, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
Rudder is, the one that allows the ship to change directions and stuff, because back in those days, they didn't really have the wheel or anything. But yeah, and this is just a brass fastening.
Okay.
Okay. This is a relatively new picture. This is, I think this was taken in 2020. Yeah, not too long ago. Exactly. This was taken in 2020 by a local when the storm just uncovered everything. So the shipwreck that we were not able to see in the water, they were all revealed.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the second picture that you showed. Belongs to the
Okay.
second one.
Yeah. Got it. Got it.
Yeah. And this is the full site. Well, well, sort of.
It's quite messy.
Quite messy. Yeah. Just maybe just look at the wooden parts
Yeah.
because those are the shipwrecks and not the other ones. Hey. Yeah. So I can clearly see framings here,
Mhm.
some hull planking. So
Yeah.
hull is the bottom of the ship, and
Yes.
framing is the one that gives the
Shape.
boat or the ship shape, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I can clearly see that. I wish I was able to record this back in 2018 for my thesis, but this was not possible at all. So now I've missed everything. I would have loved to see this myself actually.
Okay. So, I'm sure a lot of people have been looking at these pictures and they're quite mesmerized by what you do. Do you have any advice on what path they should take if they want to take this up as a career?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to become a maritime archaeologist, it's better. It's always best to have some sort of background in archaeology or even history will do. And one of the most important things to do to get yourself trained in is to go diving, is to learn how to dive, because it's one of the major components of maritime archaeology. And a lot of the shipwreck sites that you would work on, or any underwater archaeological sites, they don't necessarily have to be shipwrecks. You need to know how to dive and go underwater and record, map everything. So diving is really, really essential.
Mm. And what
uh,
level of training would you suggest as a diver?
right, okay, so you the first step is to do your PADI open water course,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you move on to PADI Advanced Open Water Diver course.
Yeah.
Okay, so with PADI Open Water Diver course, the depth limit is 18 meters. Sure, that's good enough.
Yeah.
But if your archaeological site is deeper, say 25 meters, which happens, right? Then you would want to be an advanced diver, which would essentially let you dive up to 30 meters,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then you can get your nitrox certification done, which basically means that you get to stay at a specific depth for a longer period of time.
Okay.
Okay, if you are diving on air at
Yeah.
25 meters,
Mm.
the time limit that you would be diving with nitrox would be a lot longer compared to air. Okay, so that means more bottom time,
Yeah.
and this will essentially help you to record more underwater for
And
archaeology.
how many dives would you suggest somebody have before he or she takes this up?
Preferably at least 25,
Okay.
because a lot of the people sort of like just try to get an understanding of what buoyancy is after 15 or
20,
20
25
dives.
dives. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And obviously, Rishabh, you would agree as an instructor as well that 25
Yes.
dives
Yeah.
it's preferably it's preferred, right?
Yeah.
That way you have a good understanding of buoyancy, and buoyancy is very crucial if you want to do underwater work.
Mm-hmm.
Any sort of underwater work, buoyancy is crucial, especially if you're going to be drawing. You need to stay underwater for at that specific spot
Yeah.
for quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
So you would need to have good buoyancy skills. And also, once you finish your diving courses, it's imperative that you continue diving.
Yeah.
Okay,
Get
you
some
just
fun dives.
cannot, yeah, yeah, exactly. You just cannot stop diving. You have to do some fun dives, or else
Mm-hmm.
it becomes totally counterproductive.
Got it. That's good advice. Everybody keep diving.
Yes, please.
So, back to the shipwrecks, Madhu.
Yeah,
Why is it so important to look at and understand these shipwrecks?
because they reveal so much information about how our people lived, like
Uh-huh.
like how far we've gotten
Yeah.
from one specific point of time
Yes.
to here. Okay, it basically tells you everything: the evolution, the technological change, the
Mm-hmm.
adaptations that people had to make, the economy to
Okay.
get to a point where we are now. Okay, and this is not just about shipwrecks. Like I said, shipwrecks is just one part of maritime archaeology. right? You can go and study about ports, and then they would reveal so many items that people used beforehand, and that can tell you a lot of stories, right? So ultimately, it's all for us. It's all for the public. That's what archaeology is really.
Got it. So, Jihan and we've
Hmm.
been exploring the Park Bay and the Gulf of Mannar for almost a year now. He
Yeah.
has a little more. And we've found quite a few wonderful sites here. And in 2004, Natarajan Athiyaman published a book, Ancient Anchors of Tamil Nadu Coast and Ship Tonnage Analysis,
He
based
did.
on his research here in Rameshwaram. Okay.
Hmm.
So tell us something about marine archaeology in the Park Bay and the Gulf of Mannar.
Okay, sure. So according to Dr. Adyaman, he has actually revealed that Gulf of Mannar has a lot of potential for marine archaeological investigations compared to northern part of Tamil Nadu coast, like Pumpuhar, Mahabalipuram, etc. Right?
Yeah.
That's because places like Pumpuhar, Arikamedu, they all have rivers surrounding them, and there's a lot of sediment discharge coming from those rivers.
Yeah.
And the problem with such sediment discharge is that they will bury the artifacts that we want to, ultimately find, and it just becomes more and more difficult to find, and it makes it very hard to go diving as well,
Yeah.
because it's not really safe. The visibility will be very poor,
Yeah.
things like that. So it becomes a little bit hazardous if you go diving in those conditions. But Gulf of Mannar is protected. It's protected from all of those stuff, and due to so much maritime history, Gulf of Mannar has with Southeast Asian countries, China, Mediterranean countries. It's only we have to do some sort of research down here, and they also did some research in Dhanushkodi, if you remember, after its submergence. It After the cyclone hit in 1964, it buried itself at a depth of 5 meters,
Hmm.
right? And then once tsunami hit,
Yeah.
which made the water recede 500 meters away from the shore, it was all revealed. So they found quite a lot of cultural material, and they were all quite old as well. Not everything was modern,
Okay.
So things like that. It is very that's a big one for the Gulf of Mannar, actually, Dhanushkodi.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gulf of Mannar does really hold a lot of potential for marine archaeological investigations.
Okay. That's good to know.
Mhm.
Um, okay. So, how lucrative is maritime archaeology in India?
uh, I guess it's how it really it's based on your outlook. I guess for me it's very lucrative because I'm very passionate about it. But one has to remember that maritime archaeology is not a common field. It's very specific. It's very niche. So
Hmm.
it is going to be extremely hard to find jobs anywhere, especially in India, where the field it is good, right? There are a lot of maritime archaeologists working in India,
Hmm.
but it is not there yet. It is not very, very developed.
Okay.
So what I've been doing is conducting some outreach programs so that people get to know more about this discipline.
Yeah.
And I gave out a few lectures in Tanjore back in February 2020.
Okay.
And then there were so many upcoming archaeologists who were really interested in maritime. So it was very good to know that you know those people would probably be able to keep this discipline going
Hmm.
as well. Well, with me, along with me.
So, India has about 5,000 years of history in the maritime activity, and it has
Hmm.
about 7,000 plus kilometer coastline. And it's played a major role in commerce and cultural interaction with the East and the West, like you just said some time ago.
Yeah,
Thousands of ships have crossed the Indian Ocean, and many were lost in nautical calamities, piracy, warfare. Do you think there's a lot to find along our coastline?
for sure. For sure. And we have. Take Dwaraka, for example, Bedwarka, for example, Goa. In Goa, they found shipwrecks. There is potentially a Portuguese one, and we,
I have dived there.
Goa, Goa and Portugal, they had a lot of maritime connections. Actually, they landed in Goa from
Mhm.
Lisbon and everything. So along that line, there have been so many documents say that there have been so many Portuguese ships that have sunk.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of taking an initiative and going, but that's also not easy. There's a problem of funding, etc. So there's a lot of things going on, but definitely India is one of the best countries to do maritime archaeological investigations. I mean, as you said, 5,000 years worth of history. Yes, please, I'll do it. But yeah, so we've done investigations in the east coast and the west coast, like Kerala,
Mhm.
Gujarat, like I said, Dwaraka, Betwarka, Tamil
Yeah.
Nadu, Mahabalipuram. Mahabalipuram is visited
Yeah.
so often, and they're
Yeah.
still finding things.
Yes.
So definitely.
Okay. So we were talking earlier over the phone, and you were telling me that the word treasure is never used in archaeology.
Yes.
Okay, my bad. And treasure hunting is an abomination. Like,
Oh yes,
can you
definitely.
care to tell the world about this? Because we've been thinking of Indiana Jones and Lara Croft, and I've been looking up to them a lot since I was a kid. So
Uh,
educated.
right. Okay. So treasure means commercialism,
Yeah.
right? Because treasure means it is something of commercial value.
Hmm.
How do you get it commercialized? By selling. But the artifacts, we call it artifacts in archaeology, by the way. So the artifacts or the objects that we find uh, uh, from an archaeological investigation, we do not sell them,
Okay.
right? We keep it. We if we can we conserve them or
Hmm.
give it to a museum, and we basically exhibit it,
Yeah.
right? We do not sell them. But there are people like Indiana Jones or whoever. Um, there are people who call themselves archaeologists, but they sell these items, right? They sell these objects. So what they really are either capitalists or opportunists.
You're really ruining everybody's version of Indiana Jones.
I know this is a tough one, isn't it? But yeah, unfortunately, we don't go treasure hunting in archaeology because, well, if you go treasure hunting or salvaging, you're not an archaeologist. Let's
Okay.
just make that very clear.
Okay. So, coming back to our previous question, you
Mm,
were talking about Dwaraka.
mm.
Yeah. Is there any more that you could tell us about it?
Yeah, so Dwaraka, the investigations it actually started with Dr. S.R. Rao. We call him father of marine archaeology in
Mm-hmm.
India.
Yeah.
So he started it as early as the 1960s
Yeah.
or the 1970s, but I think it's the 1960s. And then he found, if I'm not wrong, he found an anchor,
Mm-hmm.
a few anchors, I think. So he decided to uh, uh, he decided to put together a branch called as Underwater Archaeology Branch
Okay.
at the National Institute of Oceanography in Goa.
Mm.
Okay, so Dr. S.R. Rao, along with a few other maritime archaeologists, mind you, um, they were not educated in maritime archaeology. They
Mm.
were divers
Yeah.
who knew a lot about archaeology.
Mm-hmm.
So what all they were able to do was just implement what they knew about archaeology, and then combine it with their skills of diving,
Mm-hmm.
and then come up with an investigation properly,
Okay.
right?
We
So
have a
yeah,
question.
yeah. What?
Sorry. We have a question from
Uh,
Facebook Live.
okay.
So, what about non-diving methods for marine archaeology?
Non-diving methods.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
sure.
Dwaraka, for
So
example,
yeah.
they have very bad visibility and strong currents, right? So, are there any other ways you can do this?
Well, if your site is predominantly in the water
Yeah.
or underwater, and the weather conditions are very bad for you
Mm-hmm.
to conduct an investigation,
Yeah.
it is not possible to do it then. But you can always reschedule and
Okay.
then go visit that site again when the weather is a little bit more conducive.
Okay.
But like for example, if you take my site for example, right,
Mm-hmm.
we had two parts of it. One part was in the water that we were not able to access it because of the weather conditions.
Yeah.
But the photos that we showed you,
Yeah.
it was on the beach. It was easily accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for that you don't really need diving. And there
Yeah.
are many archaeological sites like that are also on the beach.
Okay.
Okay, so if you do not want to do underwater archaeology, then that is fine. You don't have to know how to you don't need to know diving. But it just gives you an added benefit if you do know diving, and then when you in future
Yeah.
um, you want to get employed, this becomes this puts you a little bit higher up than the person who would not know how to dive.
Okay.
I hope that answered the question.
I think the question meant, are there like submersibles that we could use instead of sending down humans?
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, that's for deeper sites.
Okay.
uh, uh, a common thing would be, an example would be, a famous example rather would be Titanic,
Titanic. Yes.
right? Although they did have people in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only saying Titanic because a lot of the people know what I'm talking about.
Definitely.
So that's a submersible.
Mm-hmm.
um, so yeah, there are other things like submersibles and ROVs, SUVs. They're all submersible that you can use instead of going diving, because there is certain only up to a certain depth you can actually go and work efficiently for
Mm-hmm.
archaeology. And if your shipwreck, if your ship is at say 150 meters or something, but it's a very important ship that you can get access to,
Yeah.
don't go diving. Just send submersible in.
Okay. Very informative, Madhu. Uh, I think that's the end of our session today. Is there anything else that you would like to tell the people that are
Yeah, we
watching
were
us live
actually
right now?
talking about Dwarka,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So like I was saying, after putting together a team of maritime archaeologists at NIO, they went to Dwaraka and started to do some investigations. And then the more they did, the more they found. Like
Uh-huh.
they found Indo-Arabian anchors, so many anchors.
Yeah.
Um, and they went to Betwaraka, a neighboring
Mm-hmm.
island in Gujarat. Then they went to Mahabalipuram.
Yeah.
And in Pumpua, they even found an 18th century shipwreck.
Okay.
But I think uh, the most the word, what am I looking for? I think the most famous part of maritime archaeology in India would be the excavation of Princess Royal in the Laccadives.
Okay.
So it was a full blown. They raised the shipwreck, and they raised a lot of artifacts like cannons. So it was a British East India Company shipwreck.
Yeah.
So yeah, so things like that.
Okay. So we have another question by Venkatesan Balaji.
No, okay.
Have, have you done any project on Setu Sundaram or Dwaraka? Dwaraka.
No, I have never actually worked in any of the sites in India. Unfortunately, the work that I've done has always been in Australia, Vietnam, and Sri Lanka. But I haven't done any work in India per se. Hopefully, that changes very very soon, because my PhD research that I'm planning to do is in India. That's why I also came back from Australia. But yeah, unfortunately not. But hopefully soon.
Okay. Fine. I think that's about it for today.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Madhu. And thank you
Thank you.
everybody for joining us. I hope we've tried to answer all your questions. And I'll see you guys next week.